Welcome to the September 18th, 2023 meeting of the Wayzata Planning Commission. I hereby call the meeting to order. My name is Peggy Douglas, and I'm a member of the Planning Commission. Due to the absence of both Chair Stockton and Vice Chair Sorensen, staff has asked me if I would be willing to serve as acting chair this evening, which I'm willing to do. So as the first order of business, I would ask for a motion to appoint me as acting chair for tonight's meeting.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next on the agenda is the roll call. Director Gellner, would you please call the roll?
Yes, Commissioner Schwalbe.
Present. Here.
Acting Chair Douglas.
Here.
Commissioner Merriam.
Here.
Commissioner Elg.
Here.
And Chair, please note then that we have absences from Chair Stockton, Vice Chair Sorensen, and Commissioner Severson this evening.
Thank you. The next order of business is approval of tonight's meeting agenda. Does anyone have any questions or proposed changes to the agenda? If not, may I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Second.
Second, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passed. Next on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda. This evening's consent agenda consists of the minutes of August 21st, 2023. Does any commissioner have any questions or comments on any item on the consent agenda or wish to pull an item for separate discussion or action? Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Wright.
Second.
Second. Thank you, Commissioner Swalby. Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The motion passes and the consent agenda is approved. Next on the agenda is public hearing items. This evening, we have one public hearing, which is an application for variances at 308 Hampton Street South. Director Gellner, will you be doing our presentation this evening?
Chair, I will turn it over to Planner Corals for the presentation.
Thank you.
Good evening. Tonight we'll be talking about one application. It's for some improvements to the property at 308 Hampton Street South. The owner is Cindy Warnert, and then her architect is Perry Bolin. For reference, this project is located on the southeast side of town, close to a couple of other projects we've looked at recently. The parcel is zoned R3A, single and two family, as are most of the parcels around it, and it's also guided central core residential, as are most of the parcels around it. So this is an aerial view for reference. There's going to be a lot of info on this slide, so I'll walk through it a little slower. The home is near the front of the lot and right up against that north lot line. That's going to be important later. There's a really little detached garage in the back of the lot, tucked in the other corner. The current driveway is up on the Hampton Street side there and is supported by a retaining wall in the right-of-way. There are additional retaining walls in the driveway on the property as well, but there's a difference between the ones that are in the right-of-way and the ones that are private. To the north is 1202 LaSalle, to the south is 312 Hampton. And then just for reference, the front of the house is up towards Hampton, the north side and the south side are side lots, and then the rear is back to the east. This is a street view. You can see that we've got that right-of-way retaining wall that shows up in a couple parts. You can also see some mats that get used on that gravel driveway today, just for traction, is what the applicant was telling me. But the main thing to take away from this is you can see how tight it is between this house, that driveway, and the next house over. And I'll get into a little bit more detail as to why in a minute. When it comes to the existing conditions, in R3A, the minimum lot size is 9,000 square feet. This one sits at about 6,500, so a little bit under. The home was built in 1914 and has not been substantially improved since then, either through additions or any other changes to the building envelope. Both that home and the accessory structure in the back don't conform to setback. So the house is supposed to be 20 feet away from the front lot line. It is not, and then it's also supposed to be 10 feet away from the side. It comes up to about 3 feet away from the side currently. And then that accessory structure in the back is supposed to be 5 feet away from both lot lines, and it is not. The other conditions that are really important to mention for this site is that that whole area in blue is a gravel driveway. You'll note that it doesn't conform to that 10-foot side yard driveway setback we've talked about a lot. This one definitely predates that particular regulation, given the age of the house and the configuration of the property. So we consider that a legal nonconformity. In green, I've called out a cellar with utilities that are accessed outside. This is kind of a crux of the applicant's proposal here, is the fact that right now, getting to a lot of the utilities that people would normally just keep in the basement, she's got to go outside and open up her storm doors and get to, which is tough in the winter. And then in yellow is that house we saw in those images of the property. That's the house at 312 Hampton. That was actually granted a variance in 2014 to be that close to the lot line, so something important to note. So the proposal is to make actually quite a few changes on the lot. The first is to build an attached garage on the back of the house with living space above. That would also involve removing the existing detached garage way in the back. With that, they'd reconfigure the driveway to just serve that new garage, so they'd lose all that impervious surface leading all the way back to the back of the lot right now. There'd also be a little bit of movement of the current retaining walls because they'd be moving down into the garage closer to the front of the lot as opposed to all the way in the back. The driveway would be improved from gravel to concrete pavers, and then to deal with runoff incurred by the project, there would be a rain garden in the back to catch all of that. So with that, the requests that would enable that project are an impervious surface variance. This is another one where we have an overall reduction, but it's still above the impervious surface limit, so we process a variance. And then we also have that side yard setback variance, as if you remember, the house is already 3 feet from the lot line, and if you want to continue that, you're still very close to that north side yard lot line. I'll walk through this as well. My arrows showed up a little early. I just wanted to note for a moment the scale of this particular lot. I think when there's a lot of information, it can seem bigger than it is, but at the end of the day, the footprint of each of these, the current house's footprint is about 820 square feet, and then the proposed addition's footprint is about 640 square feet. So it's blown up really big on the screen, but that doesn't mean that this isn't a really tiny house getting a not much bigger addition. There is a proposal to have, I mentioned the new driveway. That would also involve new asphalt in the right-of-way. That was something that engineering wanted. We actually don't allow gravel driveways in our code just because of runoff and erosion, so that was something that engineering wanted to see. There's a series of retaining walls just north of the driveway that you'll see there's a label that says grass. Those are going to be taken out and just put as grass instead of having that sort of series. She's got like a patio there right now. She's planning on adding a small deck to the side of that addition, and then, of course, that new driveway goes all the way from the front of the property and then takes that L turn into the proposed garage entrance. That rain garden sits in the back. This whole property slopes from front to back, so the idea is to put the rain garden where it's going to catch most of the runoff. And then just to note that that garage we were talking about earlier is removed, so that whole part of the yard ends up being turf. Just for reference, these are some floor plans. For the floor plans themselves, the part on the left is the current house. The part on the right would be the new addition. So you can see that on the first part of it, there would be that garage, and then above that is just sort of a natural extension of her current living space. And then I added a little bit of extra annotation to this elevation because if you go to this property, it doesn't look like a two-story house. It's not really. It just slopes down in the back. So the way that this architect drew up these renderings was showing like the casement window and that sort of thing. So that's just there to clarify. So I mentioned that impervious surface variance is an overall reduction. That's because we took away that huge part of gravel driveway, and we do count gravel as hardcover. There is a tire track style driveway. I think that was also done to cut down on that impervious surface. And then a couple other minor updates relating to adding a concrete walkway near the garage, and then those updates to the retaining walls, as I mentioned. That does include the addition of a retaining wall sort of along the south side of the driveway, which is what allows the driveway to slope down to that new garage. And then for stormwater management, I mentioned that rain garden. I do want to clarify that that provides capacity for hardcover over 25%, not 35%, because this is technically in the shoreland overlay district. And so we want to look for mitigation above that lower number because they're within that 1,000 feet of Lake Minnetonka. For the side yard setback variance, we require that houses are 10 feet away from the side yard. This would not be. This is an interesting thing to consider because when the applicant first came to us, the original discussion was just, hey, can I move my existing garage up? You know, right where it is, keep it for the same distance from the lot line down there, but move it up. And in that scenario, we were looking at having a whole new, you know, that garage maybe 3 feet from the house to the south. And so we encourage the applicant to, you know, consider putting it in the rear of the house, consider, you know, a lot of other locations for it, and this was what ended up happening in terms of being able to be continuous with the house, but not impact that house to the south that is so close to that property line. I do want to note that the adjacent home to the north is not shown on the survey, but that one is compliant with setbacks, so there's a pretty significant gap between this addition and that home. However, to that end, we've still requested that they do an additionally fireproofed wall in that new addition, just because it is going to be close to the property line. And engineering also wanted to note that there are no utilities in the setback, so they're not encroaching on something that we have. As I mentioned, no utilities. They did find the stormwater management plan adequate for handling runoff on the property. There will be a maintenance agreement ongoing required and a driveway permit to do that asphalt work in the right-of-way. And then, as with any project, we want to see an as-built survey to make sure that what they actually built is close to what, if there is an approval, what this group and the Planning Commission would have approved. For neighborhood notification, all our standard stuff, they sent their letter notification out at least 10 days ahead of the meeting, as did we. There is no neighborhood meeting required for just variances. And then in front of you, printed, you'll see 2 public comments that we received. One came in over the weekend, one came in today, so naturally I wasn't able to get them in the packet. One of them is for the project, doesn't see any issues with it. The other is a sort of diagonally adjacent neighbor that I think experiences maybe some current issues with runoff that is concerned about those continuing potentially. So as you consider each of these variances, you're going to want to look at how they fit with the comp plan, if they're reasonable asks, if the issues that this property owner is dealing with have more to do with their property or with their own actions, and then would granting these variants really change the character of this neighborhood? And then after you discuss, you'll ask us to prepare a report and recommendation with whatever recommendation you have. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Do any of the commissioners have any question of staff?
Well, I do.
Okay. Commissioner Miriam, go ahead.
Could we go back to the slide showing the layout of
Yes.
what's being proposed?
And I can go a little earlier if you don't want all the labels, up to you.
No, this one's good. So that rain garden, is that actually in the lowest part of the property?
It should be. If you look at the overall, this sort of sits on a little bit of a knob, so it both slopes out towards 1202 LaSalle and towards the back.
Okay, and we did receive a letter from somebody on LaSalle. Would that home be to the northeast or southeast, or where would that home sit? Because I want to address the concern here about water runoff from the property. You know, you're shortening up the driveway so it doesn't go as deep. You're removing that garage. And so if all the water is going to end up in this rain garden, maybe that's good. So I'm just wondering where that house is located.
Yes, so thank you, Commissioner. That house is located to the northeast. So if you're standing on this property, the rain garden is what's going to sit in between you and that house as you look to the northeast there.
Okay, oh, I see. So if it is frozen, yeah. Okay. And then my other question is, you got the grass strip in the driveway. So, I mean, you're talking about, you know, there's still a driveway there. There's two tire strips, I guess, that are gonna be paved, and then you got grass in between and on either side. When we've seen this at homes in the past, it's been something that they tolerated temporarily, and then they came back and they ended up hard covering the whole driveway. And that's happened in 2 instances that I can think of. So is what they're proposing here a realistic solution for a driveway? Or are they gonna end up, is there that potential of them coming back and saying, hey, it's not working, we're gonna have to pave the whole thing? And how does that affect the hardcover, the impervious surface?
Sure, Commissioner, that's a great point. I think that there's a couple things to keep in mind here. One of the things that they've done is for a significant portion of the driveway that's in the right-of-way, they are just paving that straight out, not the tire track style, because that doesn't count towards their hardcover, so they're not penalized by doing that. And then for this, for at least this limited portion, yes, they'll have to travel on the tire tracks before they get to that sort of turnaround pad closest to the driveway. It would definitely add to their hardcover request if they wanted to pave in between, but I think one of the things that I have to do as staff sometimes is if this is what the applicant wants to apply for, and they think that they can tough it out and stick on the tire tracks, then that's what they've applied for. So if they wanted to come back in the future and pave it, we'd have to evaluate it and say, is this a problem that you created, or is this a problem that's unique to the property?
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
about The same thing about the driveway. I thought that I read that it was going to be pavers. And somehow I have in my mind from a previous request that pavers were considered permeable because there's space between them, gravel. Is that not right?
Thank you, Commissioner. Typically, when we talk about permeable pavers, we're talking about almost a whole system that has like an engineered base that's designed to hold and trap water before it flows into the ground. This is not that. This is just regular pavers as you would install a driveway, as opposed to that sort of storage system that we talk about sometimes.
Would it make a difference if they did pavers?
Permeable pavers?
Permeable pavers, yes.
In this case, they could. Some cities, when they talk about hardcover, they, consider a credit for permeable pavers of, it's only 50% hardcover, even if it's this much area. We're more likely to just count everything towards hardcover, and then if they had wanted to do permeable pavers as part of their required stormwater mitigation, they could have done that, but they chose to put all that capacity in the rain garden as opposed to as part of the driveway.
Okay, and about that rain garden, engineering has or has not looked at this yet?
They have okayed the preliminary
Okay, that's what
plan,
I
yes.
thought. And it's their belief that that rain garden and the way the driveway is set up and with the removal of the old garage, that there won't be a runoff problem, is that right?
Yes, and when we look at these sort of runoff schemes, our code states that if you're gonna have runoff on your property, we want you to take care of it on your property as much as possible. And so that's the lens through which they're evaluating it.
Do you understand what the person who sent in this last one is talking about when he says that at his address, 1220 and 1222, maybe it's twin home or something, I don't really know. He seems to think that none of this is going to make any difference to him in the winter, that he is going to have snow runoff or something, and he already has a great deal of trouble with ice coming down from that lot. Does anyone have an opinion on that in the city? Have we looked at that?
It's a good question. I can try to, as a planner, I can try to speak to it, knowing that it's not my area of expertise, but I would think that having an interruption in the flow of water towards that property would probably go a long way, even in the winter. It's rare for, that's where I'm talking a little bit out of my expertise, but I would think that a depression in the ground would go a long way towards containing a lot of that before it got to the property, which is about And I know that when engineering looks at this, they're looking at trying to contain all that runoff on the property as much as possible. So that's what I have.
Okay. And it appears that the owner of this house and her architect are not here tonight, so we can't ask them. Is that correct?
No, I don't see them.
Can I ask a further question? Sure. Because they're asking for a variance, it says we can put a condition that is pertinent to the variance. I mean, they're asking for this impervious surface increase. Could we have a condition that maybe it gets monitored for a few years to ensure that there isn't the runoff problem on the other property, and that if there is, that it's handled appropriately?
Absolutely. That's actually already built into the process, since that's that stormwater facilities maintenance agreement that I mentioned.
Okay,
And that's our mechanism for if there are issues and that system isn't doing its job. They've signed an agreement as part of installing all this that they need to take care of it.
okay.
So
I have a question about rain gardens. Do they have, like, I call it a bubbler, something to keep the water moving in the winter?
often a rain garden doesn't end up being a pond. It ends up being more of just a depression through which water
Depression,
ends up
yeah, like down at the
inflowing, but it
beach,
doesn't
the one down
necessarily end
there.
up being standing
Yeah,
water.
okay. And then on that home, you said something about the current home, it's two-story now from the back?
It has, I don't know if it's quite two-story. It's got a first floor and a basement. I'm not
Oh, a
quite sure
basement,
how
okay.
exposed that basement is.
Okay. When I drove by there today, it seemed like the garage from LaSalle was kind of backing up where the new garage is. Does that make sense? Did you see that?
Yes, the
Yeah.
garage on LaSalle and the property to the north, that one's a lot further towards their rear property line than this
Oh,
one. But this
okay.
addition would end up sort of being in line with
Okay,
the
okay.
house on that property.
All right. Any other questions for staff?
I have a question. So the house to the north, is that a Hampton Street address?
No, that's LaSalle.
Okay, so this is the first house on Hampton Street South, on the left side of as you enter,
Yes.
right? Okay.
Yeah.
So it's that exact neighbor who is concerned, the one right next to him.
Did he note that he was with 1220 or 1222?
Pardon me?
Can you remind me what address he noted he was from?
1220 and 1222.
Okay. Then yes, it would be the house, oh, I'm sorry, it's 1202 directly to the north, which is owned by John Boyd. And then 1220 is diagonal, and 1222, I'm not sure of, that's not popping up for me in Hennepin County, but that might be an address he gets mailed to as well at that address.
But the exact adjoining lot is 1202.
Yes.
Okay. And so we get to 1220 and 1222 by going past 1202 and to the right. Or
Yes,
to
so
the-
they're kitty corner to this property.
Yeah.
You want to go to the overhead
Yeah, that would,
view
Yeah,
so
good
they
idea.
can see the diagonal where it's at?
I think years ago, they combined lots or something. That used to be a smaller house there, and it's a very long house and garage, that 1220, 1222.
It doesn't
Yeah.
really show
I'm
on
not
here,
gonna-
but it's on the other side of, oh, wait.
if you look on this is pretty zoomed in because it's meant to focus on this property, but this is the 1202 house, which is not the person that wrote us a letter.
Uh-huh.
And then this is 1202's garage over here in the back of the lot.
Wait,
1202's garage.
where?
Oh, you can't see my,
It's obstructed by trees a little bit there,
Well,
but
I was looking
where
for
it's-
her pointer, but we can't.
it's not there. It's the building that is just above the label that says side north. That's 1202's detached garage.
Oh, I
Okay,
see.
got
And
it.
then next to that is 1220. And I'm not sure whether that's,
So that garage is, the far garage to the right is 1220, associated with 1220. Okay.
Any other questions? Well, thank you, staff.
Well, I
Oh,
do.
Go ahead. Oh, go ahead.
Only because on page 22 of our packet, there is some of the plans, and I want to make sure that I understand what they're trying to present here, and I don't understand what it's trying to present at all. So if you could explain it, I'd appreciate it, especially if it's pertinent. On page 22,
I'm on my way.
there's like a red, the property is surrounded, like drawn around in red, and then underneath
Yes.
it's
So
blue.
that has to do, that's their stormwater management plan.
Okay,
And that's, to be completely honest with you, something that I completely left to engineering. It has to do with how the water's gonna flow into the rain garden.
okay, the red one does, or the blue, or both?
I believe it's a before and after, hang on.
Okay.
Does page 21 make any difference? More clear?
I've got it. So the red one is proposed and the blue one is existing.
Okay,
And so as I understand it, each of those zones sort of has to do with where it's gonna flow. So the front of the property, which has a slope down towards Hampton, is not gonna necessarily end up flowing all the way into the rain garden, so that's why it's delineated a little differently.
okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we normally invite the applicant forward, but no one's here. So should we go right to the public hearing? Do you think they thought it was at 7 o'clock, the meeting?
Chair, we informed the applicant of the meeting, and we're not sure why they are not present this evening, so I would recommend we just move forward to the public hearing at this time.
Okay, so we will move forward to the public hearing. Before I begin, I'd like to make a couple of comments. The public hearing is a time for us to listen to you, our community, about the approval requests we are considering. It is an important part of our official process that allows the public to participate. Any questions asked during the public hearing will be held until the end of the hearing and may be addressed by staff at that point. With that said, I will now open the public hearing on 308 Hampton Street South. And since we have no one in our audience, Community Development Director, do you have members of the public on Zoom who would like to speak?
I do have one member. They have indicated a desire to speak on this item, so I'm just going to take them off of mute here and see if we can bring them up on Zoom.
Do you have to unmute?
Okay, Mr. Vanderheiden, are you there?
I am.
All right. Please state your name and address for the record, and then you can say your comment.
Yes, hi, Planning Commission. My name is Dan Vanderheiden. I live at 312 Hampton Street South. So I'm the house just to the south of 308 Hampton Street. And I only have a couple of comments. Our house was built in 1924, and it is 18 inches off the lot line at one corner, and I believe 12 inches off the lot line at another corner. So we're very close to 308 Hampton Street. We did a renovation in 2015 and obviously ran all of that through the city of Wayzata for all the necessary steps in order to add a second story to our home. Cindy was very gracious, our neighbor at 308, so we want to work with her on this. Because our property lines are so close, I have a couple of requests. One is just to make sure that the south side of the property is surveyed for any work that is going to be done on that driveway, any retaining walls. I just want to make sure that we're just so close to each other. It would be very important to have that survey done and have those stakes posted the day that the work is being done to make sure that it's accurate. The other obvious concern, being 18 inches away from this proposed new driveway, I want to make sure that that sloping of that driveway is in fact sloping away from our house. It's right next to our home. We have a newly finished lower level. So it's critical that the city engineering department is present and reviewing the slope to make sure that that driveway is sloping away from our house. And as it appears in the architectural design or the survey, that it's going back to the rain garden, which is fabulous. If we can just make 100% sure that the inspections are taking place and that that slope is correctly installed, that will be critical to this application. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vanderheiden. Anybody else on Zoom?
No, Chair, that's it.
Okay. With that, we will close the public hearing. We'll bring it back now to the commission for discussion. Thank you. Do you have any questions now for staff at this point?
Is a survey currently required as part of this?
Yes, so you're looking at a survey that was completed this year, and then as part of the construction work, they'll need to know exactly where the property line is and be following that survey.
Okay, I figured so.
So his request will be met.
It should be baked into our process already, yes, but we'll be extra careful.
And the sloping of the water is covered in that stormwater agreement? Yeah.
Any other questions of
Well-
staff before our discussions?
Of them? Well,
You have another question? Before
it's
we,
part of the discussion. I can wait.
okay. Does somebody want to begin with their comments? Commissioner Ige, would you like to come in? Begin?
Well, sure. I think this is a really nice project. I'd like to accommodate the homeowner. They've worked with the city and the engineers to develop a good plan with good stormwater drainage. Sounds like neighbors have also done projects, and the community's fairly cooperative. I think it meets the requirements that are being asked, so I'm inclined to support this.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Marion?
Yeah, I'm in agreement. It's, with a 6,500 square foot lot, and an 820 square foot home, I don't always like to make exceptions for lots that are substandard in size, but this is just a really tiny lot, however that came to be, and, to make a home there that is of a suitable size, I just feel like it's a reasonable request. And it looks to me like they're actually making the situation better in terms of shortening that driveway, having a turn. And the architectural drawings just seem very suitable for the area. So, I'm inclined to recommend approval. I would want to ensure that, everything's in place so that there aren't any repercussions for the neighbors. But yes, I would recommend approval.
Mr. Schwalbe?
Well, I think the one thing that concerns me the most is that they're not here tonight. And I would like to have asked them a few questions. But just looking at what I know, I think it would definitely be a positive addition to the neighborhood, to the community. It'll be a more beautiful home, and so will the driveway. I think that these are not due to any circumstances that the landowner created. It seems very reasonable to me. I think it's consistent with the comprehensive plan, so I don't have any issues with that. I'm just not sure the best way to proceed when the people who are presenting it aren't here to be questioned on anything. How does one normally proceed in that case?
The applicant's presence is not necessarily required for you to make a decision. Would you like to ask those questions in case we can answer them, those questions you have?
Well, one thing that makes any changes that people do to a neighborhood more positive for everyone is if the neighbors are in agreement with each other about what's going to happen and feel confident. Now, I don't know what all information has been given to 1220 and 1222 LaSalle Street, but the way this memo was written, they are very strongly opposed and use exclamation marks, capitalizations to make a point of how not in agreement they are. And I just hate to leave a community, a neighborhood, with that discord, if there would have been a way to have worked it out. I guess that's my only comment. I would have asked them what steps they had taken with those neighbors.
So I think that we can just recommend that the applicant be present for the council meeting to address that comment, and then that the person who made that public comment with that concern hasn't reached out to staff yet, but if they do, then we can connect them with our city engineering team to talk about any drainage issues that may be occurring in that location. I think that's about the best we can do this evening.
Okay. Well, I like the project. I do. I just have a concern that there would be any discord in the neighborhood. It's just never good if you can avoid it.
Thank you. I pretty much agree with the other commissioners. I felt that this project, I liked the fact that it's one of the older neighborhoods of small homes, and we need all kinds of homes in our community, and I'm glad she's making it, improving it. I think it'll be an asset, and the additional space will make her home more desirable and livable for her. I noted that the home was built in 1914, and we used to recognize homes when they were 100 years old. I wonder if the city is still doing that, if her home was recognized. I don't know if she was even an owner in 2014. But
Probably not.
probably not, but
Probably 2014.
there's some charming homes in that neighborhood, and I just like maintaining some of these smaller home neighborhoods. I think city engineering will have to be on top of that drainage thing, and the one neighbor, I don't know where she lived, but spoke out in favor of it. So it sounds like we have a consensus around the group, and that we are all feeling the same about this project. So may I have a motion to approve this project?
I will make a motion. I move that the Planning Commission direct staff to prepare a draft Planning Commission report and recommendation reflecting a recommendation for approval of this application for review and adoption at the next Planning Commission meeting. Should I include anything about their presence at the city council meeting?
I don't think it's necessary as part of the motion, Chair and
Then
Commissioner.
that is my motion.
Okay, may I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, second, Commissioner Miriam. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, the motion passes. And the draft report and recommendation will be on the consent agenda at our next meeting, and after adoption, will go on to City Council for their consideration. And again, thank you to everyone for their participation in tonight's meeting. So now let's turn it over to Community Development Director for Gellner for other items on the agenda.
Yes, Chair, I'll just bring up our meeting calendar here. Our next meeting will be on October 2nd, Monday, October 2nd. We'll have 2 public hearings that evening. The first is for a single-family home at 223 Gleason Lake Road. They'd like to make some improvements to the property, some variance requests there. The other public hearing we'll have on October 2nd is 1903 Wayzata Boulevard. This is a series of 3 office buildings on the frontage road next to Hammer Residences. And they would like to sell one of the buildings, so that involves subdividing the property so that it's its own unique property for sale. No physical improvements are actually planned under that proposal. That's what we'll have that evening. We're still working on applications that could be ready for the October 16th meeting, but they haven't been deemed complete quite yet. So there's a small chance we wouldn't have a meeting on October 16th, but I will inform you as soon as I can. It's just dependent on how far the applicants can get in the next week or so. Looking into November, we have a typical schedule in November. And then in December, we have a typical schedule, and we'll see how the holidays are going and see if we can cancel December 18th or not. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
So I drove by Meridian Manor today. I don't see any action there. Do you know what is going on? Are they still planning on building, redoing that, making changes?
The property owner at 163 Wayzata Boulevard, the Moments of Wayzata project, is no longer going forward as planned because they ran into issues with their state license. They are working on a new proposal to share with the city at a future date, but I have not yet seen any drawings.
Okay.
Well, thank you, everyone, for this evening, and this concludes the items on our agenda. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Swalby.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Ig. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next time. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Motion, meeting adjourned.